Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Dayspring Discussions. I'm your host, Sean McGahee, and this is a show where we talk about movies, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, comic books. If you geek out about it, we're going to talk about it. You can listen to Dayspring Discussions on iTunes, YouTube, Podomatic, Patreon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, wherever, guys. While you're there, go ahead and like, rate, review, subscribe. Then head on over to the social media groups such as the Facebook group and Twitter account and join in the discussion. Don't forget Dayspring Discussions at gmail.com. If you have a topic or a question, I'll be glad to answer it there. And then finally, you can find me personally, Slim Dayspring 12 on Twitter and Instagram. Well, guys, we have come to the end of the week. It's Friday. That's right. And the only way I know that it's Friday is because there's a new Star Wars Clone Wars episode ready to go on Disney Plus. I've been home all week, kind of let you know kind of my situation a little bit. Just learned that my job is going to be closed for another month. So, as of right now, I'm going to be home taking care / watching / homeschooling my daughter for this time period while my wife works from home, and I do my best to keep her out of her hair so she can get some work done. You know, we're all going through our own thing right now, guys, keeping the social distancing, hoping that this clears up as soon as it possibly can. I think the smarter people are about it, and the more careful they are, the quicker everything's going to get resolved. But, you know, we'll see how it goes, guys. Either way, you know, there's always stuff to do, always stuff to watch, and I'm going through it myself right now. Black Lightning Season 3 I'm almost done with. I have several other things that I plan on watching / rewatching, and of course I'm doing this in my free time as well. So yeah, hope you guys are safe, hope you guys are doing good and bunkering down during this time, and as I said before, this is the time that, you know, we rely on other people, I think, you know, are willing to help people that, you know, do need help, because this is the time when we need each other, and let's do what we can. All right, well, enough about that. On today's show, I want to talk some Star Trek. That's right, the final episode of Star Trek Picard aired yesterday, or came out yesterday on CBS All-Access. So I want to talk a little Star Trek. I want to talk about my thoughts on the season as a whole. And you guys, of course, fire back on the social media groups and Gmail account. Let me know what you think. So as most of you know, I'm a big Star Wars guy. Never really got into Star Trek growing up. My dad, definitely I would call him a Trekkie. You know, I remember on Sunday nights or on the weekends, in the evenings, he'd be sitting down watching Star Trek. I remember watching, you know, episodes of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and a little bit of Voyager when I was younger. You know, I was around the house and he had the TV on in the living room, and I would sit down on the couch and read my comic or even, you know, briefly watch a couple of the shows too. But, you know, never really got into Star Trek myself. As I got older, you know, I think I learned to appreciate it more. And really what happened was around the time the new movies were going to come out, the first J.J. Abrams film around 2009, I borrowed the entire film collection of Star Trek movies from my dad, and I watched all of them. And at that time, I was, you know, maybe 25, I think, 26, something like that. So again, I've watched them all before, but going and watching them again, I really enjoyed most of them, actually, you know? So kind of grew into a new appreciation of them. And then, of course, 2009 Star Trek came out, and I loved it. Like my wife, who had no interest in Star Trek at all, actually loved it too. And I've enjoyed the films that come after it, Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond. Now, Star Trek itself, you could arguably say, was a franchise that was somewhat dying until that film came out and kind of reinvigorated it a little bit. But there, of course, since has had issues with the franchise. I mean, those films have been, you know, big budget films where Star Trek isn't known for making a lot of money like the Marvel movies or the Star Wars movies. So that's where they'd run into where they're trying to get a fourth film made, and the budget just doesn't make sense for the type of money Paramount predicts the movie will make. So that's why it's almost seeming like we're not going to get a fourth film in that continuity, in the Kelvin timeline, as they're calling it, because, it's all about alternate reality, where, Nero came back with Spock and splintered off another reality that we got, which is Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond, where you have the original timeline, which is where Picard takes place. And that's kind of want to talk about here just briefly in a moment. But just to finish the Kelvin timeline, that's what's gotten me into Star Trek, with those characters hyping up the action a little bit, which I know some Star Trek fans that have been longtime Star Trek fans have had issues with. But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed those movies. I've enjoyed that cast, the stories, and really I've enjoyed the comic books, actually, by Mike Johnson, that have been published throughout the films taking place there. If you're enjoying the movies, I would highly recommend going and checking out the Star Trek comic book series that takes place, in between the films, because I think they're worth checking out. Now, I actually don't believe there's going to be a fourth one made unless a budget is like super cut and people agree to pay cuts. Again, just because of the type of film that the bar has been set for with the previous three, the money it would make, and the money it won't make. So I don't believe we're going to get a fourth one, but it's sad. Either way, we'll go on with our lives. But we have been getting plenty of Star Trek on TV. Now, CBS All-Access, one of the streaming services, they came out and they gave us Star Trek Discovery to start off with. And I checked out Star Trek Discovery because, like I said, as I've gotten older, I feel like I've appreciated Star Trek a little bit more. I like a lot of the films. Star Trek The Next Generation, I could say I watch it. I don't want to say I enjoy all of it, but I can watch it and be fine with it. In regards to other Star Trek series, not so much. I mean, I think I tried watching Enterprise and couldn't get into it. I haven't tried Voyager or Deep Space Nine, but at this point, I'd say Star Trek Next Generations I like, and that's probably the only one I like to watch, which is why I decided to give Picard a try. Discovery I tried, couldn't get into it. I understand what it's like and what people like about it or don't like about it. I just can't get into it. But CBS All Access is really banking on Star Trek. That with Discovery, with that, they got an animated series called Lower Decks that's coming, and this Picard series. This was something that I would call almost the Force Awakens of the Star Trek fan base, where you bring back a fan favorite character, Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard, to get the old fans excited. And while a lot of stuff in the Star Trek universe is going backwards, such as Discovery, the Kelvin timeline, what else? Enterprise was before that. Those were all like before the original crew or, before that. This is the first thing we've gotten that's in the future of the future, really, where it's, past Next Generation, past Deep Space Nine, past Voyager even. So it's the furthest we've gotten in the original Star Trek timeline. So again, at this point, this is where I'm going to reiterate that I'm not very knowledgeable about Star Trek. I mean, like I said, I like the three newest films. I've read the comic books. I've seen all the other movies. I've watched, I wouldn't say a good amount of Star Trek The Next Generation, but probably more than the average person by chance. And, I'm very familiar with the franchise as a whole and some of the more well-known characters. So again, what I'm about to review, let's take with a grain of salt. I wouldn't really call myself a Star Trek fan, nowhere near a Trekkie. My dad's a Trekkie. My brother-in-law, Ian, he's a Trekkie definitely too. I haven't asked him about what he thought about last night's season finale, but, I'm sure he has some opinions on it as well, being that he's a much bigger fan of the franchise. We'll see what he thinks about that. So I'm coming at this just from more of a casual perspective more than anything else. Maybe more than the normal guy, though. Now, the one thing I enjoyed from this series right off the bat, story wise, is that it does tie into the current Star Trek films, actually, because you go back and kind of what the prologue of all this was Jean-Luc Picard trying to help the Romulans before their planet was destroyed. And that's something that goes back to the original Star Trek film, much like how Spock was also trying to help the Romulans. If you go back, there's the Star Trek comic book that was the prologue to the 2009 film. I believe it was called Countdown, if memory serves. But in it, you get how Spock meets Nero, kind of their relationship and what goes on there. But also you see that Jean-Luc Picard and Data/B4 and Geordi from Next Generation, they're there as well trying to help out. And again, you see Jean-Luc Picard trying to help the Romulans when a lot of the Federation doesn't want to either. And we come to find out in this series, part of the reasons why the Romulans weren't evacuated as much is because there was a synthetic uprising on Mars. And again, shit went down. Synthetics were banned, have been for a while. Fast forwarding a little bit, and Jean-Luc Picard is retired, living on his vineyard. And, he gets a visit from a girl named Raj. And come to find out, she's not a girl. She's an actual android. And Jean-Luc tries to help her find her sister Soji. Look, if you're listening to me and you haven't watched the series or don't know what the series is about right now, take a pause, watch it, come back. I'm not going to hold back spoilers, but also I don't feel like explaining 10 episodes of plot to you. So that's, the basic start off point of it all. I just want to get into it right off the bat. And again, if you haven't watched it, I'm going to spoil it for you, or you've watched it and then, of course, fire back and give me your opinions. So as a whole, I thought it was okay. Of course, bringing back Patrick Stewart, who is great. I remember a few years ago, he came to Austin Comic-Con, and I haven't gone to Comic-Cons in a while, honestly, because they're so damn expensive. You got to pay to get in. You got to pay to meet the celebrities and get the autograph. You got to pay for everything. And, I used to go to Comic-Cons a lot to get like back issues and graphic novels and good deals on that stuff. But ever since I went digital a few years ago in my comics, I just don't. I get good deals. I pay, $5 for a graphic novel digitally, and there's no better deal than that. So I'm not big on Comic-Cons these days. But the Next Generation crew did come to Austin a few years back, and I really honestly thought if I was going to go, I would want to get my picture with Patrick Stewart, because he wasn't only Jean-Luc Picard, one of the greatest Starfleet captains, he was also Professor Xavier. And I think there's a great debate still among Star Trek fans. Who's the better captain, James T. Kirk or Jean-Luc Picard? There are great debates for either one of them. But, you watch the series and he's definitely someone who pulls you in, which is great. But bringing it back, he's a little older, Patrick Stewart and Jean-Luc Picard, of course. You could definitely see the physical limitations of Patrick Stewart. Not to say he's still not a great actor, but in a role like this, I think someone who, could do a little more stuff physically would be better. And going straight to the ending, how they took the character and tried to help him live on, basically as a synthetic, I didn't like. Honestly, I didn't like how that ended. I thought they should have just let him go. He did one more great act as a hero. And, the strain on it cost him his life, but he avoided a great catastrophe. And, I think they should have left it at that. Of course, they want to go on and do a season 2 with it. And I think that's great, mainly because I do like the cast of characters on the ship that they've assembled, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I think the character of Picard, continuing him as a synthetic with the brain of Picard, he's going to age the way he would have without the problem. I think it's a cop out, and story wise, I didn't like it. But obviously, again, some people have stronger feelings than me about whether they liked it or dislike it, and I'd love to hear them. Fire back in the social media group, and let's discuss it. Now, the story as a whole, actually, it was interesting. The plot that these Romulans believe there's a synthetic Armageddon that's coming, and so that's why they made this whole deal about wiping out synthetics. And to say honestly, they weren't wrong. If you looked at that last episode, these mechanical arms, it looks like it was, the Matrix coming out. The Sentinels were about to come and devour somebody, really is what it was. And I feel like that'd be a really good tease for next season or future seasons about how these synthetics that Soji was about to bring forth to try to help them, they look like they could be pretty nasty, actually, and something they might have to deal with in the future. And there was a whole talk, really the whole theme was about being human, where when it came to Soji and also Data, about, how her whole life, which was a very short span of 3 years, thought she was human and then coming to the realization that she's a synthetic, but she's still human-like. Again, it was a whole theme. In that last episode, Picard was talking again about what it means to be human, what it means to be mortal. And really, it's a good, theme to have. But even as a casual Star Trek fan, or not even a Star Trek fan, but as a guy who's, watched Star Trek Generations more than a couple of times, that's exactly kind of the same speech in a way that Picard gives at the end of Star Trek Generations about time and morality and life being precious. It was just a different version. So you could say that it's the same theme, that it's something that Picard believes in, so that's why he's fighting for it. But really, to me, it almost seems like a little bit of lazy writing to take something that was a really good quote. I love the quote in Star Trek Generations, and then just bring that back in a different way, thinking it's supposed to be profound, when really it's just recycled dialogue from earlier in the franchise. All right, so now I'm going to run down just a couple characters, of course, kind of go bit by bit how I kind of feel about them. That way I can get a good sense of, how I feel about plot points as a whole. Start off with Soji, played by Isa Briones. I think that's her name. First off, she's hot. I'll give her that, definitely. Good job. I don't think I really had any complaints about the way this actress portrayed this character or this character as a whole, given what was going on with her, the realization that she was technically a robot, and what she did, how at the end she decided to side with the synthetics against Jean-Luc Picard, and eventually turned away from it. I liked it. No complaints. I think the way she played it was great. And again, if I didn't emphasize it again, I think she's hot. So we're good there. Alison Pill, an actress who I've seen several things she's been in, most notably The Newsroom on HBO. And of course, there's Scott Pilgrim versus the World she was in too. Played Dr. Agnes Girardi. This character was very wishy-washy for me. Not to say anything of the actress herself, but just, again, she starts off as a very timid character. You come to find out that, she actually kills Bruce Maddox and is kind of a spy for the Romulans. She hooks up with the captain, Chris Rios. And, it seems more like a one-night stand kind of thing. But by the end of the series, they see it's more of a relationship, which I don't understand. I was watching the season finale, and, the crew is coming together, which Raffi and 7 of 9, I'll get to that in a minute. But, where they formed as a couple, I didn't feel like it was earned. I didn't feel like, their one night stand and then supporting scenes with them or conversations they had, I feel like supported a foundation for a relationship. Just from a story perspective, I didn't get that. And then, of course, at the end, she pretends to side with the synthetics, and really she's not. She made the joke about, I think I'm a really good spy. I get that. But again, her relationship with Rios is, again, something that was a little lacking for me. And then just the character herself, she seemed not as strong as I would hope, a character would be, especially for the actress. Again, just a little weak, in my opinion. With Raffi, played by Michelle Hurd, I went and I was like, I've seen this actress before. And I go to her IMDb page, and, she's been in a lot of things, actually. So, of course, I've seen her before. But, she is a character. If you go back, again, there's a prequel comic to the series that is about Jean-Luc and her during the, Romulan evacuation or synthetic massacre, whatever you want to call it, and kind of their relationship and how that is. So I read the comic beforehand, so going into it, I knew who she was and kind of what their relationship was. And we see her in the series at a low point. Eventually, meet her son and what's going on with there. And, she starts off as a broken character, and then she bounces back. Again, kind of a little wishy-washy as far as going from, how she feels at the beginning to kind of almost flipping a switch, in my opinion, which I felt was better than, say, what Agnes was, but not handled great. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm overcritical of the show. I do enjoy the character, though. I just feel like, the fact that we go from one episode where she's crying over her son, and then she kind of flips over to being okay and all about the mission, it just seemed a little odd to me. My favorite character, though, was Captain Cristobal Rios. And of course, I go back, and the actor, I've seen him before, too. He was in the show Heroes on NBC. He was the artist. What's his name? I forget the name. But anyway, he was the one who could tell the future through his art. I loved him, and of course his the computer programs that he played with the different personalities too were really interesting. Just kind of the down on the luck captain who had been a member of Starfleet, kind of felt betrayed or gotten out of that life, and now he's manning his own ship, kind of like a Captain Reynolds type character, where he has his ship just so he can feel like he's in control and in control of his own destiny. Kind of a hard-nosed character. Definitely my favorite character of the series. So I really enjoyed him. Eleanor, going back, as someone who's connected to Jean-Luc, he had his episode, right? And then from there, I feel like they didn't do too much with him. From then, they established a relationship between him and Picard. And then from there, he was just kind of in the background. Again, you have a lot of characters, and you have to keep the story focused on Jean-Luc and Soji. So I get it, but I think some of the other supporting characters suffered because of that. And Eleanor was one of them that I feel like they didn't do a lot with, versus say 7 of 9, who I think, again, had a little bit of a problem as well. The thing about it is that character is already established in the Star Trek universe, going back to Star Trek Voyager. If you're a Star Trek fan, you know her. I mean, I know of her, but I don't know her. But chances are, if you're going to get any real enjoyment out of this series, you're going to know the character and know a little bit more about her. It's more of a treat to get her in the series. So again, it's kind of like when Riker and Troy showed up for me. I know those characters pretty well, So for them in that one episode, it was more of a treat for me. Much like I feel that's kind of how 7 of 9 was with a lot of Star Trek fans. I don't think she got a great storyline, but it's a treat for Star Trek fans to have her in there and have a little bit to do and see how she's grown since seeing her in Voyager. And then the last couple of characters of the Romulans, you had Narek and his sister. Of course, you had Commodore O as well. It's one of those things where towards the end of those last 2 episodes, you got a sense of, what the Romulans were trying to do. They were trying to save the universe almost from what they believed was a synthetic uprising that was going to, destroy humanity or the universe. And honestly, the way things were going, you can't say they were wrong. Now, the whole time they're perceived as the bad guys because they want to kill, one of the main characters, Soji. They want to find this colony of synthetics that are hiding out. So you think they're the bad guys. And, I love those little plot twists in storylines where I was thinking about last night, the Underworld movies, the very first Underworld movie, actually, where, the whole time you're thinking the werewolves are the bad guys, would come to find out they're really the good guys. And, those flipping of the narrative like that, I enjoy stuff like that. And I don't think the Romulans were necessarily the good guys, but I don't think the synthetics, the colony of synthetics or Soji's sister, who is trying to summon the evil synthetic. I'll call them Sentinels, because again, I feel like they look like they're about to, be the Sentinels from the Matrix movies pop out there. Not necessarily a good person either. So it's really, it's two sides of the coin, two sides of the argument, where I think they both have valid points. Granted, of course, the Romulans were probably a little more slanted in the bad intentions category, but either way, I see where they were coming from, especially the character of Narek after you get to know him a little bit, especially in that last episode. Supposed to be a little more sympathetic for him. I don't think it's the last we've seen of him. Obviously, it's the last we've seen of his sister, but I think him and Commander O are going to come into play later on. Okay, guys, I got to wrap this up because my daughter's getting a little restless, and if I don't keep an eye on her, my wife's not going to be too happy with me. So, Picard Season 1, I thought it was okay. I thought, there was some lacking character developments that could have gone on a little better. The very end there, they're showing everyone on the ship and kind of how their newfound relationships are. You had that little handhold and look between Seven of Nine and Raffi. Again, a little forced, maybe hinting, of course, at something that we can see in a season 2. But if they do it, I want to see the development. I don't want them to automatically be together. One thing I liked, in talking about, the same-sex relationships, I think Supergirl on the CW handled same-sex relationships probably the best I've seen of almost any show in regards to Alex and Maggie. You saw the development of their relationship just like you would any other relationship develop. I enjoyed you saw it grow. And if you just jump in on it in season 2, I don't think it's something you want to handle that way. My opinion, of course, I like to see the relationship grow so that it's earned when you actually see them, not just jump into it and be like, hey, here's a same-sex couple. I'm like, every other relationship you'd see them grow, show me that. That's all I'm asking for. So, all right, guys, well, time for you to fire back. Let me know what you think about Star Trek Picard Season 1. Are you excited for Season 2? If there's going to be one, do you, what are your ideas for Season 2? Where do you think they can go with it? Overall, I enjoyed it. I'll probably watch Season 2. But, it wasn't great. I think they fumbled a lot. I can't say I loved it. I know some people have more higher opinions of it, and some people have lower opinions of it. It seems like these days, a lot of people who have been Star Trek fans for decades are crapping a lot on some of the newer Star Trek stuff, and some of us who aren't as hardcore Star Trek fans seem to enjoy it, which, you got to bring in new fans for any franchise to survive. Star Wars is trying to do it with, the New World. My daughter and her friends, they're into the Rey and Kylo Ren stuff. Not so much original trilogy. A franchise has to grow. It has to adapt. Otherwise, it dies. And again, you could say, that's what Star Trek has been trying to do since 2009. You just have to carve out that niche that works for it, that can make it be profitable. And I think, again, Star Trek is still trying to find its identity in this modern age about how it can work. And maybe it's almost there. possibly, but we'll see in the next couple years how it goes, guys. But like I said, fireback, social media groups, Gmail account, dayspringdiscussions@gmail.com. Let me know. That's it for me today. Like I said, keep yourself busy. If you're, watching anything or reading anything you really like, fire back on the social media groups or the Gmail account. I'd love to hear about it. Maybe tell me why I should be watching or reading it, and maybe I'll share it and check it out. So that's it. Go out, enjoy your day, enjoy your week, enjoy your life. And until next time, may the force be with us all.